What if Bruce Wayne didn't survive in the alley? What if his father did? Who would become Batman? Welcome to the Complete Story series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Now, this story is set in the world of Flashpoint, and it toys with the idea of an alternate Batman and Joker within this world. Our story begins with Thomas Wayne walking through his casino with Oswald Cobblepot as Oswald goes over the last night's surveillance footage. Thomas asks if there's anything that he needs to be aware of, and Oswald says, well, the Maroney boys were there, but they were just doing kid stuff, pushing, shoving, nothing too crazy. Thomas then tells him to leave them be for now. He opened this casino so he can bring crime to him. A short while later, Thomas steps out of the lobby to see Commissioner Gordon, and he properly tells him, "Go to hell." As the two leave, Jim begins to explain that Harvey Dent's children have been taken by the Joker. But as they later head into the Batcave, Jim says that their leads are pretty thin. The only information that they have is unreliable homeless people, drunks and junkies. But Jim says that he can get the police to check it out. Thomas tells him, "No, I would rather do it myself." Later that night, Thomas heads down into the sewers to follow up on the leads with the homeless people living underground. As he steps into the waters, he notices something, a human bone, off in the distance. He also begins to hear somebody calling out to him for help, but it's low and weak. He heads deeper into the sewers where the sound is coming from, and he finds a door barred off and someone calling for help from the other side of that door. He takes the bar off and he sees some people who have been taken captive. But then something begins to rise from the waters behind him. As Thomas turns, Killer Croc swings a machete down on him. Using the bar from the door, Thomas manages to block the hit, and then he swings the bar, cracking Croc in the wrist, causing him to drop the machete. Croc then lunges, grabbing Thomas by the neck, and he starts to hold his head underneath the water. As Thomas fights to get back up, he reaches out, gouging out one of the Croc's eyes. Croc steps back and jumps in for another attack, but this time there's a thwack as Thomas stands there holding the blade of the machete buried into Croc's skull. The body falls, and Thomas releases the prisoners. But elsewhere, lightning strikes as the Joker tells the Dent children, "We're gonna play a game. Someone gets to be daddy, and someone gets to be the baby. The mommy, though? Well, they're just gonna have fun. Then he will show up." The next day, Jim heads over to see Oracle about a possible new lead. As he walks in, she tells him that earlier that morning they found a man floating in the river. Pretty gruesome too. His eyes are missing. They were able to identify the man as John Randall, and they found his wallet, along with his eyes in his pockets. Last known whereabouts was that he was delivering pizzas close to Arkham, and after some digging, Oracle managed to find his vehicle. Selena then says, why is that monster still alive? When Thomas finds those children, he will do everything he can to make right by them, but it's never right. It will never be. A little while later, Jim leaves to search the abandoned car for a clue, and he tells Thomas that he might have something. Thomas says that he can come out within 30 minutes, but Jim says there's no need, he'll take care of this. He then begins to pull up on a manor with a giant W printed on the gates. Elsewhere, Thomas heads out to do his own investigative work on one of the local bars to see if anyone saw how the body ended up in the river. The patrons go quiet, but when Thomas looks at one of them, he says, "Not him." Thomas punches the man in the gut, stating, "That sounds like a confession," and then a bat is swung. Thomas catches it grumbling to himself, and the barkeep says that Bullock didn't see anything. However, maybe Batman can help them. The barkeeper leads Thomas down into the back, stating that the Joker showed up at the bar with a pizza, offering it to everyone. Everyone knew better, but the new guy, he had a slice. The barkeep turns on the lights, and the man sitting in the chair begins to laugh. She asks what does he think that they should do for him, and Thomas tells her that there's nothing they can do, other than he walks over, grabbing the man's head, and then snap. And as he walks away, he finishes telling her, "Blame him." Once Thomas is back on the streets, he calls out to Oracle to see if she can run an ID check on pizza delivery. But she stops him, stating, besides the one we already have, Jim's had that intel hours ago. Thomas then asks what did he know, and Oracle says, did he not tell you? Oh no. They found Randall's car not far from Wayne Manor. Back with Jim, he begins to search Wayne Manor as he begins to hear a muffled cry and a slight laughing. As he walks up the stairs, he looks into one of the rooms and he sees the Joker standing over a child holding guns. He jumps into the room, opening fire on the Joker, but as the bullets hit, he sees that it's not the Joker, but it's the other Dent child propped up holding the guns. He runs over to the little girl, telling her please don't die, and the brother watches, and then the blood is splattered across his face as the Joker says, "She didn't listen. Kids never listen." And Jim's body starts to fall after having his neck slit. Outside, Thomas drives through, breaking the gates to his former home, and then he runs inside shouting, "What have you done this time, Martha?" As Thomas runs up the stairs, stating not again, Martha calls out, "Oh yes, dear, again and again. All of your mistakes are piling up. I would hate to be you almost as much as I hate you." And then Thomas runs into the room and he sees Jim's throat cut, and then the little boy holding his sister's body. He tells him that he's here to help, and he begins to pour a solution on the girl's bullet wound, and her eyes widen, and he tells her he knows that this hurts, but hurting means that she's alive. Seeing the little girl, it reminds him that he was in this position once before, when him and Martha watched as their son Bruce was gunned down in an alley. From behind the curtains, Martha swings out swinging a hammer, hitting Thomas in the back of the head. Still thinking back, he remembers how Martha stopped taking her medication after Bruce was gone, and him telling her he misses him too, along with her smile. Not long after Bruce's murder, Martha slowly became mentally ill. Thomas figured that he would bring Martha back, so after some searching, he found the man, Joe Chill, and he beat him to death. After returning, he told Martha that he did it. He killed Joe Chill, and Martha turned back stating, "She knows, but look!" Thomas watched as blood drips down Martha's face, where she cut open her own mouth, and her telling him, "I'm smiling." Back in the current times, Martha continues to hit Thomas in the head with a hammer until finally he grabs her by the arm and he pulls her out the window. As they fall outside, Martha tells him, "You know that you're a failure, right?" And he says, "Yes, all of the blood on my hands, it hasn't changed a thing." Martha jumps up telling him, "Wrong, it's changed you." And she begins to run off. Thomas catches up and he grabs her and she tells him, "You know what I want, a world where he doesn't exist." And he asks, "Really? Even if that means that you won't exist either?" Back then, a man and a woman and their only son cut through an alley. Martha begins to tell him, "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" But Thomas goes on, telling her, "We were mugged, 2 shots were fired. A man and a woman fall dead, but their son lives. He has an opportunity to make that real. Rewrite history, erase history, as twisted as it sounds. He needs to know from her. Should he do it? Should he rewind time?" Through her tears, Martha tells him to promise her. Promise her that he would do it. But their son, Bruce, what would he do after they're dead? Thomas says, "He'll follow in his father's footsteps." And Martha asks, "Become a doctor?" After a moment of silence passes, Thomas hangs his head telling her, "No." And Martha understands. In an alternate world where their son got to live, he would be the Batman. Martha yells, "Oh God!" and she begins to run and Thomas follows. But through her running, she tells him, "Stay away!" And suddenly the ground under her begins to crumble. She begins to fall and Thomas tries to grab her, but falls short, and the bats begin to fly out of the hole in the ground. And once the bats clear, Thomas looks down to see Martha's body, lifeless. This is a dark and twisted version of what would happen to Thomas and Martha if Bruce died. Thomas would become Batman, and Martha would become the Joker. This takes place in the Flashpoint universe. And the universe that he was telling her about, the one where he had a chance to erase history, that happens in the events of Flashpoint, and I'll link that down below, because in that, it's Thomas's job to help Barry Allen save the day. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this story, because it's one of my favorite alternate Batman stories out there. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Comicstorian, and I'll see you next time right here.